Guys, is this how it all kicks off? What in the actual hell is going on? China's elite hacking units hacked voting information of 40 million citizens in the UK. Like, everyone. You know what else they did? Something a little more close to home, as I'm American. They tried to put malware in America's electrical grids to cause panic and disaster. They also sent over 10,000 infected emails to hack American politicians, but not just that, dissidents and people who are critical of the Chinese government. The Justice Department indicted individual Chinese hackers for what Attorney General Merrick B. Garland called a 14-year effort to target and intimidate Beijing's critics around the world. The impact of what I'm about to tell you of what they could have just pulled off is actually insane. I think it's one of the biggest escalations we've ever seen in the conflict with China and the West. Have you ever searched for something online and then you start seeing ads and promotions about it from services you've never visited? Have you ever registered for your store's loyalty card and then a few days later you start getting spam in your mailbox and calls to your phone? Well, the people behind this are some of the most vile individuals that you will never meet, and they're called data brokers. Data brokers make an entire industry out of selling your private information so that you get more junk mail, spam calls, and your privacy gets breached. But what if I told you there's a company called Incogni that can go out there and fight these data brokers for you? I'm proud to say that I'm working with Incogni. As soon as you sign up for Incogni, which is super easy by the way, all you have to do is put in your information. Incogni will go out there and send lawyers' letters to those data brokers to make sure that your information gets taken off these lists. Not only that, you can actually use the interface to find out which data brokers are worse than others and what they actually do with your information. If you were to try to do this yourself, it would take you years, but Incogni makes it super easy and super affordable to take back your privacy today. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Go to incogni.com/cmilk and use the code CMILK to get 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Take your personal data off the market today. I've been warning you guys for how long now? The Chinese government's intents are not only malicious and self-serving, now they've become aggressive and proactive. Before, it was all about how can they control their own country, but now it's a lot greedier than that. It's trying to, on the surface, repair relations with the West, at least nominally, and then goes and commits seriously grave abuses against politicians, dissidents, journalists, and directly goes after people on American and British soil. The hackers were part of a group known as Advanced Persistent Threat 31, or APT-31. That has for the last 14 years targeted American companies, government and political officials, and candidates and campaign personnel. It's important to see exactly what China did here. You guys need some perspective on how absolutely insane this is. I read through the indictment. Since at least 2015, the conspirators sent thousands of malicious tracking email messages to the personal and professional email accounts of government and political officials in the US and elsewhere, including targets' family members and contacts. The malicious email messages, generally purported to be from prominent American journalists, contained email subject headers purporting to contain legitimate news articles, and the body of the messages purported to include excerpts from news articles from news outlets such as CNN and Vox. However, the messages contained an embedded hyperlink that served as a tracking link. If the recipient activated the tracking link by opening the email, information about the recipient, including the recipient's location, IP addresses, network schematics, and specific devices used to access the pertinent email accounts was transmitted to a server controlled by the conspirators. The conspirators used this method to enable more direct and sophisticated targeting of recipients' home routers and other electronic devices, including those of high-ranking U.S. government officials and politicians and election campaign staff from both U.S. political parties. By the way, you see how this goes both ways? The Chinese government wants you to bicker over Democrats and Republicans, but all they actually want is the demise of the USA. They don't pick a side. Anyway, Gone are the days of China only caring about how it affects its own citizens. It already blocks the internet. It completely controls its own country, at this point akin to what North Korea does. It's one of the least free countries in the entire world. The current leadership in China is not satisfied with simply controlling its own people now. No, it needs to silence critics and control governments and the general narrative in free countries too. Well, guess what, Chinese government? I don't think that's gonna fly anymore. They got caught in what I think is the most malicious turn of events, the most evil, on-the-nose escalation of conflict I've seen in my lifetime. This is horrific, and it shows that China is on the path to serious destruction, not just of the countries around it in its general vicinity like Taiwan, but to the US specifically. It's one thing to beef up your military and do military parades and show off your new military tech and tell people that, Chinese people, we got your back. We're going to defend you in the event of a conflict. That's normal, but to attempt a major hack of American infrastructure, that's just sick. Just like we saw with the Chinese government's paper on ethnically targeted bioweapons before, we are now seeing the true intent, the true sick, disgusting nature of the Chinese government. They target civilians, and not just in their own country with political control and censorship, but in the US and other countries as well. They're targeting the livelihood, health, and safety of American citizens. That's beyond messed up. So when American intelligence actually figured out what this malware was and where it was in the electrical grid and stuff, do you know what they found? It appeared to be intended to use if the United States were to come to the aid of Taiwan. The theory is that Americans would be too tied up worrying about their own supplies of electricity, food, and water to help a distant island that Beijing claims as its own. They want to sow chaos, division, and warfare in the USA, and they've been doing so through multi-billion-dollar propaganda campaigns, TikTok, co-opting influencers and politicians to what I call now the America Bad Party, which is, when people would rather promote authoritarian governments abroad over their own government and claim that America is the worst country in the world for a variety of reasons. It's become quite fashionable these days. No joke, I think China and Russia have successfully created such distrust and division in American society that they have inadvertently created the America Bad Party at this point. They've gotten lots of American stooges to speak their talking points and spread their propaganda in America. And much of the American populace, they've gotten to jump on board and support this idea. I'm not kidding. The American Bad Party is a real thing. In fact, they have seen such great success in polarizing the US populace that they're laughing, simply laughing at the divisions that they've created. I think that they've seen such success in America that if the America Bad Party were to run against the Republicans and Democrats today, I think they might win. That's how successful their campaign has been. Anyway, China's ambitions are laid bare, guys. It was pretty transparent before, but now we found out they steal 40 million UK voter rolls? Where are we at in the world? Can you not see what the hell is happening in front of you? While you bicker about domestic politics or your perceived issues on your toxic social media, literally made to divide and distract you by China, China is actively threatening your country and the civilians that live there, not just politicians. Forget partisan politics. Forget your current argument of the week on whatever you think is important. The Chinese government just tried to hack your electrical grid, shove propaganda down your throat, stole your voter information, and hunted down citizens of your own country, dissidents and critics of China on your own soil with its own overseas police stations. I'm sorry, but I think that takes precedent here. If you enjoyed this video and you want to stay on top of China's current events, I cover everything. Up-to-date information, it's on The China Show. It's the only show you need to watch about China's news, politics, pop culture, what's viral, what's happening within China. It's coming from a guy that spent over a decade there with his buddy, Serpent Zede, that was in China for a decade as well. So go check it out. Make sure you're subscribed there and make sure you stay on top of what's happening in China because it's only going to get more important from here on out.